Welcome back to another episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update, your go-to source for staying sharp in a fast-moving world of manufacturing, packaging, coding, and beyond. If you've been with us for a while, you already know the drill, but if you're tuning in for the first time, welcome. We break down the stories shaping our industry so you can stay ahead of the curve without having to dig through the noise. Let's get into what's making headlines this week. On today's episode, we'll be covering everything from food safety to corporate accountability. We'll discuss Boar's Head reopening its Virginia plant after a listeria outbreak, Bayer's massive settlement over its Roundup weed killer, and accusations that Hershey is cutting corners on Reese's peanut butter cups. We'll also break down a new analysis showing that tariffs paid by mid-sized U.S. firms have tripled. Starting off, Boar's Head has reopened its Jarrett, Virginia deli meat plant, a facility that has been under scrutiny ever since its closure nearly 17 months ago. The plant was shut down in 2024 following a deadly listeria outbreak that tragically claimed 10 lives and left dozens of others seriously ill. This outbreak triggered a massive recall of 7 million pounds of deli products, a move that not only disrupted the company's operations, but also had a profound impact on consumer trust. In the wake of the outbreak, Boar's Head also made the decision to permanently halt production of its liverwurst, a product that had been a part of their lineup for years. Now, Boar's Head states that the facility has undergone an extensive overhaul to prioritize safety and prevent future outbreaks. The upgrades include the installations of new floors, drains, and advanced air filtration systems, as well as the establishment of dedicated production areas to keep raw and ready-to-eat foods entirely separate. According to the company, over 12,000 swabs were taken throughout the facility to ensure there is no lingering contamination, and the results confirm the plant is now safe to operate. Additionally, Boar's Head has implemented stricter USDA listeria control standards, introduced new management, and hired fresh staff to oversee operations. However, concerns about the company's commitment to safety remain. Another Boar's Head plant in Petersburg, Virginia, has recently come under scrutiny for sanitation issues, including reports of meat residue on equipment and lapses in required listeria testing protocols. These recent lapses have prompted food safety advocates and lawmakers to question whether Boar's Head can truly ensure consistent, safe practices across all facilities. The impact of the original outbreak continues to loom large. Boar's Head is still facing significant challenges in rebuilding consumer trust after the incident, which has led to multiple lawsuits and ongoing criticism from food safety experts. In response to these criticisms, the company says it is actively working to address non-compliance issues, not just in Jarrett, but at all of its facilities nationwide. The story remains ongoing and serves as a stark reminder of just how critical food safety measures are at every stage of production, from the factory floor to the consumer's table. Agrochemical giant Bayer has agreed to a proposed settlement worth $7.25 billion. This agreement aims to resolve thousands of U.S. lawsuits from users who allege its popular weed killer Roundup causes cancer. Litigation uncertainty has plagued the company for years, and this settlement gives the company a road to closure, said Bill Anderson, Bayer CEO. Let's look at the key details of this massive legal action. The lawsuits center on claims that Bayer failed to warn users that Roundup's key ingredient, glyphosate, could lead to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Bayer, which acquired Roundup's original maker, Monsanto, in 2018, has consistently disputed these claims, often pointing to the EPA's approval of the product. The proposed settlement was filed in Missouri, where many lawsuits have been brought, and is awaiting court approval. The settlement is designed to address most of the nearly 200,000 claims filed against the company, including more than 125,000 plaintiffs who sued since 2015. It would also cover future cases from individuals exposed to the product before this month, February of 2026. Under the terms, Bayer would make annual payments into a special fund for up to 21 years. Payouts to the individuals would vary significantly based on their level of exposure, their age at diagnosis, and the severity of their illness. For example, workers diagnosed at a younger age with an aggressive form of non-Hodgkin lymphoma could expect an average of $165,000, while residential users diagnosed later in life could receive $10,000 to $20,000. No settlement can erase a diagnosis, but this agreement is designed to ensure that both today and tomorrow's patients have access to meaningful compensation, said attorney Christopher Seeger, representing current claimants. Despite this move, there are ongoing concerns. Some critics, including attorney Matt Clement, argue that the proposed payouts are simply not enough. The proposed payouts are exceedingly too small, Clement commented, reflecting the views of many plaintiffs. It is also important to note that while Bayer has stopped using glyphosate and Roundup products sold for residential use in the U.S., the chemical is still used in its agricultural products. The settlement comes as the Supreme Court prepares to hear a related case on whether federal EPA approval should preempt state failure to warn lawsuits. The settlement would eliminate some risks for both Bayer and claimants regardless of the outcome. For Bayer, the settlement offers a potential path to closure after years of mounting legal costs and damage to its reputation. The company is also continuing its efforts to gain legal protections against future state-level lawsuits, lobbying state legislators, and arguing that federal labeling requirements should take precedence. This case is a powerful reminder of the complex relationship between consumer products, corporate responsibility, and public health. A major controversy is brewing over one of America's most beloved candies. Brad Reese, the grandson of the man who invented Reese's peanut butter cups, has publicly accused the Hershey company of compromising the brand's quality. He claims Hershey's is cutting corners by using cheaper ingredients in many of its products. In a letter sent to Hershey's corporate brand manager, Reese questioned the company's strategy. Reese asked, "How does the Hershey company continue to position Reese's as its flagship brand, a symbol of trust, quality, and leadership, while quietly replacing the very ingredients, milk chocolate, peanut butter, that built Reese's trust in the first place?" He alleges that in several products, Hershey's has replaced real milk chocolate with compound coatings and genuine peanut butter with what is labeled as peanut creme. Hershey's acknowledges that some recipe adjustments have been made. The company attributes these changes to the need to meet consumer demand for innovation and to navigate high cacao prices. However, Hershey's insists that the classic Reese's peanut butter cups are still made the same way they always have been, with milk chocolate and real peanut butter. The variations, they say, exist in other offshoot products. Brad Reese pointed to specific examples like the new Reese's Mini Hearts, which are made with chocolate candy and peanut butter creme. He also noted that Reese's Take 5 and Fast Break bars, along with white Reese's, have been altered, with the latter now using a white creme instead of the original white chocolate. The disappointment for Reese is personal and profound. He stated that he recently threw out a bag of Mini Hearts, calling them inedible. He added, "You have to understand, I used to eat a Reese's product every day. This is very devastating for me." In its official response, Hershey explained, "As we've grown and expanded the Reese's product line, we make new product recipe adjustments that allow us to make new shapes, sizes, and innovations that Reese's fans have come to love and ask for, while always protecting the essence of what makes Reese's unique and special." The sentiment was echoed by Hershey's CFO, Steven Bosco. During a conference call with investors, he confirmed formula changes but stressed that the company is careful to maintain the brand's taste. Bosco asserted.
Start there, though.
Okay. Is it Vosco?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no other way at this point,
Vosco asserted, "In all the changes that we've made thus far, there has been no consumer impact whatsoever." Reese also highlighted differences in the products sold in Europe. Hershey explains the differences are due to stricter EU labeling laws that have different requirements for what can be called milk chocolate. Ultimately, Brad Reese is calling for a return to the brand's roots. He urged Hershey to remember the words of its own founder, Milton Hershey, who famously said, "Give them quality, that's the best advertising." And we've made it to our last story. A recent analysis from the JP Morgan Chase Institute reveals that tariffs paid by mid-sized U.S. business tripled over the last year. These businesses, which collectively employ 48 million people, have been significantly impacted by the increased costs resulting from these higher tariffs. To cope with the financial pressure, companies have been forced to absorb these costs in various ways, such as by raising prices for consumers, reducing their workforce, or simply accepting lower profit margins. Chi Mack, the business research director at JP Morgan Chase Institute, highlighted that this surge in tariffs represents a substantial and impactful change in the fundamental cost of doing business for these companies. Mack also pointed at emerging trends indicating that these companies are actively shifting their business relationships away from China and are instead looking toward other regions in Asia for their supply chains. This shift is supported by data showing that payments made to China by these U.S. companies have dropped by 20% compared to October of 2024 levels, suggesting a deliberate change in sourcing and supply chain strategies. The analysis also brings up questions about the effectiveness of these tariffs, particularly whether China is simply rerouting its goods through other countries to circumvent the direct financial penalties. In contrast, President Donald Trump has staunchly defended the tariffs, describing them as the greatest thing to happen to this country. Trump also expressed his surprise and disbelief that the Supreme Court would soon rule on the legality of some of these tariffs, asserting his firm belief that they are beneficial for U.S. manufacturers. The data shows a sharp rise in the average tariff rate, which climbed from 2.6% to 13% last year. Further research conducted by the New York Federal Reserve suggests that the financial burden of these tariffs is not being borne by foreign entities. Instead, nearly 90% of it falls on U.S. companies and ultimately consumers. Kevin Hassett, who serves as director of the White House National Economic Council, strongly criticized the Federal Reserve's research, dismissing it as an embarrassment to the institution. Hassett went even further, stating that the individuals responsible for the research paper should face disciplinary action. While overall inflation has remained stable, it is estimated that consumer prices are 0.8 percentage points higher than they would have been without the tariffs. Despite the implementation of tariffs, the U.S. trade deficit actually widened last year, increasing by $25.5 billion to reach a total of $1.24 trillion. Critics of the policy argue that the tariffs have not only failed to reduce the trade deficit, but have also fueled voter frustration over rising costs and have contributed to the slowdown in hiring. The Supreme Court is poised to deliver a ruling on the legality of some of these tariffs that were imposed under a declaration of an economic emergency. And we've made it to recall radar for this week. So, some products that you should be looking out for. There's Quest Cat Food, the chicken recipe freeze-dried nuggets. You're looking for the 10-ounce bags with best by dates of 10/15/2027. So what should you do? You should stop feeding the products to cats and return it to the place of purchase for a full refund. For questions, customers can contact Go Raw LLC at 801-432-7478 or email cs@gorawllc.com. The next product that you should be looking out for is Green Lumber Dietary Supplement. The reason for this recall, there's counterfeit products labeled. So what should you do as a consumer? You should immediately discontinue use of any product with this lot number, and you should also report suspected counterfeit products to Green Lumber at 949-426-8622 or consumersafety@greenlumber.com. You should also seek medical care promptly if you experience unexpected side effects after using the mislabeled products. The next product that you should be looking out for is Tippy Toes Apple Pear Banana Fruit Puree. The affected products are the 2-pack plastic tubs with lot number 07174. Best by dates that you're looking for is 07/17/2026. So what should you do? Discontinue use of the product and dispose of it immediately or return it to the place of purchase for a full refund. You should also contact a healthcare provider if there are concerns about health after consuming the product. For further information, customers can call 1-855-215-5730. The last product that you should be looking for are June Bar Chocolate Cherry and Peanut Butter Chocolate Chip Snack Bars. You're looking for batch numbers L1300, L1300A, L1300B, or L1301A. Check the back of the bar pouch near the bottom for the affected batch labels. You should also discontinue use of the product and return it to the place of purchase for a full refund. For questions, contact Juniper Granola LLC at 315-226-3339 or contact@junebars.com. This episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update is sponsored by our SNEED-JET XL portable handheld printer. Weighing just 2.75 pounds with a 4-hour battery life, it prints characters up to 4 inches tall on 95% of surfaces, including metal, plastic, cardboard, and more. With 6 fast-drying ink colors and crisp 300 dpi resolution, the XL makes large character printing simple. Learn more at sneedcoding.com. That's it for this week's episode of SNEED-CAST Industry Update, but the conversation doesn't stop here. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification bell down below so that you never miss an update. We want to hear from you. Drop a comment and let us know what topics you'd like to see us dive into next. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll catch you in on the next one. Bye, everyone.